Voters from across our region are looking to cast their vote to have a say in who will make it onto the general election ballot. Tonight, we're sitting down with candidates from the Washington State Representative 8th District Position 2 race. We'll cover a wide range of topics from the economy, to growth in our region, to goals for the upcoming year. Before you cast your ballot, Northwest Public Broadcasting and the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County want you to know the candidates. Recorded on the Washington State University Tri-Cities campus, this is Vote 2022. And now, from the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County, please welcome Ronni Jimenez.
Good evening and welcome to this candidate forum. My name is Ronni Jimenez. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin Counties. The League is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates. In presenting these forums, it is our goal to provide opportunities for voters to become better informed about the people who are running for public office. The 2022 primary candidate forums have been pre-recorded in person by Northwest Public Broadcasting at the WSU Tri-Cities studio rather than on Zoom. They will also now be available at nwpb.org/vote2022. through our additional partners, the Columbia Basin Badger Club, the cities of Richland and Pasco, and of course the League's website and Facebook page. Please go to lwv/bf.org to see the complete information for accessing any and all of these sites through August 2nd, 2022. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Matt Loveless, from Murrah College of Communication, WSU Pullman. Please welcome Matt.
Well, thank you to the League for that introduction again, and thank you to those of you out there watching as this Vote 2022 forum dives into the issues for candidates in Washington's 8th Legislative District in this race for Representative Position 2. On behalf of Northwest Public Broadcasting, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters in Benton and Franklin counties for continuing our collective mission here of bringing more voters' insight into the candidates who are running to represent them. I'm also thankful we get to do this in person this election cycle. We are coming to you here from the WSU Tri-Cities campus in Richland after a couple of years of virtual forums and debates. And we've gone over the rules of this forum with the candidates. And for you out there, here's how this program will go. We begin with a 1-minute opening statement from each of our candidates today, followed by a line of questioning. Once those questions begin, we'll rotate the order in which our candidates will answer. We have 8 questions for our 4 candidates today. The first 4 will have a 90-second response limit. The next 4, we're reducing that amount of time to 1 minute. We're also planning for some quick closing statements. That's a lot to remember. I'll be sure to explain as we go. Since we're back in person, the big thing we do need to remember here is to limit interruptions. Of course, as moderator, I'm just here to keep us on topic and on time, so I reserve the right to cut off a speaker if the time is up or make some fair adjustments during this program. So let's meet our candidates for this race, a Position 2 representative seat in Washington's 8th Legislative District. No incumbent in this race, so 4 challengers trying to earn a spot in the 8th. All 4 are here: Mr. Joe Cotta, Mr. Larry Stanley, Mr. John Christenson, and Ms. April Connors. Thank you to the 4 of you for being here today. We'll open up your mics to get your first word here in just a moment. As I said, we do begin with some opening statements. We'll get to some specific topics important to your voters here in just a moment, important to the League of Women Voters as well. But this will allow you to begin maybe a little bit more broadly. Mr. Christenson, your 1-minute opening statement, sir.
Hello, I'm John Christenson, and eager to serve as the state representative for the 8th Legislative District. I have public service experience. In 2020 and 2021, I served as a commissioner of the Benton County Fire District Number 1. And one of the first things that we had to do there was learn about the Open Public Meetings and Open Public Records Act. Those are required of all elected officials. Unfortunately, some of our local officials neglected to train in that, but I think they've learned their lesson, and they were required to take that training by the court. I'm a professional civil engineer and have experience, military experience as well. During the Cold War, I served in the Army in Germany in a nuclear missile battery deployed in our NATO allied Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Christenson. We'll get to more of what you have to say in just a moment. We ran out of time there, but Ms. Connors, your opening statement.
Thank you for having me here tonight. My name's April Connors, and I am a mom and a local real estate agent, and I have been selling homes in the Tri-Cities and putting people into homes for over 22 years. I grew up in the Tri-Cities and I'm raising my family here, so it's super important to me. I've been involved in the local schools, arts industry, as well as promoting local businesses. Our family also farms. My husband is a third-generation Columbia Basin farmer here. Potatoes, onions, and apples. I'm running because I believe in citizen government and I believe in giving back to our community. As a real estate agent, as you might surmise, getting along with people is a super good idea. And so I've had to learn civil discourse, problem solving, negotiating skills, and becoming an active listener. And I think all of those things are very important in what we have to do when we're in Olympia and to be able to bring good things back to the Tri-Cities. My platform is focused on energy and economy, schools, and housing.
All right, Ms. Connors, thank you very much. And Mr. Joe Cotta, your opening statement, sir.
Thank you. I'm Joe Cotta. I'm a fourth-generation farmer. I've been married for 21 years. I have 5 children. My education is in plant science. My bachelor's is in plant science. My master's is in horticulture. And I've been farming my whole life. I manage 1,000 acres that borders the west side of the Hanford property. And just been doing that a long time. I am running because I want to see our law enforcement empowered to keep our cities and our communities a lot safer. And I'm running to restore and protect our individual liberties. The rights of parents to influence their children's education, our medical freedom, our religious freedom, our gun rights, and our voter integrity. And I want to support and protect small businesses and farms. You know, I've been in agriculture my whole life, and so I understand how to make the cost of food cheaper and plentiful. And so that's it. I love our Constitution, and I'll fight to protect your rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotta. Mr. Larry Stanley, our fourth candidate in this race. Your opening statement, sir.
Hello, I'm Larry Stanley, and I manage a small winery in Benton County. I have grew up here in Richland and have led people most of my life and have learned many things about leadership. Integrity is huge. Humility is huge. There's so many things that go into leadership. I am running for this position so that you get an opportunity to understand that you can be a leader too. And I'm going for electoral reform, campaign finance reform, term limits, and many other options, or many other ideas. But you have another option besides the 2 main parties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. All right, so for this hour-long program, what do we have, about 55 minutes left? So we have plenty to get to. I'll remind you that we'll rotate the order of how our candidates answer. We'll begin again with you, Mr. Christenson, and we'll go down the line. The second question, you'll start, Ms. Connors. Mr. Cotta, you'll start the third. Mr. Stanley, you'll start the fourth, and so on. So I think that makes some sense. And let's start with question number 1. Mr. Christenson, you'll start here. Recently, criminal justice legislation changed the way policing is conducted in Washington state. Certain infractions like high-speed chases, the ability to pursue, those were affected. What do you know about the changes, and do you support them, and why or why not?
I know that there have been significant changes made in the laws regarding law enforcement and their treatment of the people who they stop. And I am glad that changes are made. We need to make sure that our law enforcement officials, empowered as they are to take any level of force that they need to keep a situation under control, are well trained and are abiding by rules that make sense and that limit what they should do in a given circumstance. I like the idea of body cameras because it gives us a record, a public record of how the officer behaved as well as the person with whom the officer is interacting. And that's all I have to say in response, I guess.
All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Connors, same question to you, and I'll just sort of restate it so that easier to follow up on it. A lot of criminal justice policing reform, I guess you call that here in Washington State. What are your thoughts on that? Do you support it?
In 2021, the Democrat side put a lot of police bills into the legislative session that weren't good. The Republicans went back in 2022. They tried to fix some of them. They didn't fix all of them. The one that you're specifically talking about, the pursuit law, has been a really big problem in our state. I did a police ride-along recently with a Kennewick sergeant and had a lot of time to, chat over what's happening and what criminals are doing. And because usually the police officers are not going to chase someone over a petty crime anyway, so we're not going to worry about high-speed pursuits on the freeway, hurting the individual driving, hurting the police officer. But what now has happened is we've emboldened the criminals, and so now they know the police aren't going to stop. And so if there's no chase allowed, they know that if I'm speeding or if I'm a criminal, I can just go and no one will actually stop them because they don't have to stop. And so it's really caused a big problem for our police officers because now in order to chase someone, they actually have to call in and get permission from somebody at a higher level. And I think that there's some other problems that are happening, especially within our criminal justice training commission, where they have the authority to investigate and decertify our police officers now. I think that has a big effect on whether our police officers actually want to be officers. It scares them, and who's doing that. We're lacking officers right now. In Kennewick alone, they're down 14. And so being able to recruit and retain is important.
All right, Ms. Connors, thank you very much. And Mr. Cotta, if I recall from your opening statement, this was among the list of one of the things that caused you to run. What are your thoughts on some of these changes?
Homicides doubled since 2019, and we've seen drug overdose use rise 35% last year, and that was the 5th largest increase in the nation. And so we need to make hard drugs illegal again. I mean, it's kind of silly. We used to say, in here, say no to drugs, and now we have to tell our legislators to say no to drugs. It's unbelievable. And a lot of the people that are supporting these penalties that are, these restrictions on our law enforcement, they're not for the death penalty, but that's exactly what they're doing by allowing people to just continue to consume these drugs and die from them. And so it's a big problem. Auto theft has doubled per month since these pursuit laws were enacted on July 25th last year. And so it's a huge problem. I just think that if you make laws that allow people to steal and not get caught, then obviously they're going to steal a lot more. And that's what you're seeing happen. And so I think reasonable suspicion is enough. I think our law enforcement needs to be able to act on that suspicion. They're trained, they know what to do, and I think we need to support them when they do that. When law enforcement follows standard procedure, they need to be supported. I understand they make mistakes every once in a while, but I think they're pretty good at regulating themselves and keeping themselves accountable, and we need to support them. They're the experts, they're the ones that are trained, and we can empower them, and we'll be a lot safer, a lot faster if we do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cotta. Mr. Stanley, same question to you. I'll just restate it as I did before. This criminal justice legislation changed certain infractions, including those high-speed chases, which we've already talked plenty about. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I believe that the reform was necessary, but while it being necessary, I think they overstepped in some areas. The pursuit was one of them, or not allowing pursuit was one of them. We need to take a measured response in reforming these the law enforcement. There needs to be attention paid to unexpected outcomes, and there's a lot of them that have happened and have been spoken about already. So while the intention of the reform, I think, was good and noble, I think the steps that were taken were a little out of step with what was necessary. So there could have been a lot of other things directed towards law enforcement, like changes in training, changes in things that would help the culture change. Because I think switching a lot of laws, changing a lot of rules, doesn't always have the expected outcome.
All right, Mr. Stanley, thank you very much. All right, moving on, and maybe get an opportunity moving forward to address some hypothetical legislation, which I know a lot of the questions here from the League of Women Voters are sort of about that. And here is one. Ms. Connors, you'll go first this time. What, if any, legislation or regulation should be enacted to enhance cybersecurity to protect our institutions as well as our citizens here?
Well, I think that we saw this last year. I'm again a real estate agent, and I got the email from our Department of Licensing that all of our data had been breached and leaked. And I think cybersecurity is something that we have to start working on within our state, especially as it becomes, we lost hundreds or millions of dollars in the last couple of years over cybersecurity within the state of Washington as well. We do have an expert who is a state legislator, is running for the state senate, Matt Binke, who has been working on cybersecurity reform within the state legislature. And so I think it's important that we continue to look at that. We continue to keep getting legislation for it. I think it's important to protect our voter systems. It's important to protect our people's data information, and it's important just to protect the health of our community and our state.
All right, Ms. Connors, thank you very much. Mr. Cotta, that cybersecurity question goes to you. What does a piece of legislation look like that helps protect people from getting those emails that your data was stolen?
Yeah, maybe we're all starting to experience that more and more. I know I experienced a little bit of it last year. And identity theft is a big deal. They get your identity and it seems like they can hack into anything. And so, we need to protect our information. I think that Matt Binke has been a great resource teaching that here at Columbia Basin, and he's a great resource to have in our party. I know that, with the election issues, with businesses, there's just a tremendous amount of concern about this issue. And so I don't have specific legislation. I just know that it needs to be safer. I know we need to work through it, and I know that we have the expertise to get it done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cotta. Mr. Stanley, that question goes to you.
Yes, IT security is very critical all across the country, but especially from experience here in this state, we have dealt with it far too much, actually. I think we need a comprehensive plan, but laws don't do enough. There needs to be the legislation needs to empower IT to do what they need to do. The law enforcement needs to be empowered in that area to be able to trace things down, to get at each malware and each software that gets in to the systems. So yeah, it's critical. It needs to be addressed. But I think the legislature it needs to lean on expertise, because there is not enough of it and not enough understanding of modern technology in our leadership.
Mr. Stanley, thank you very much. And Mr. Christenson, you'll be the last one to answer this, and it's a good segue because it does make you go, do we know enough about it to legislate it? And so that's why we asked, what would legislation look like that would protect our cybersecurity?
That's a good point. Our understanding of this big problem is growing. Over the years, say the last couple of decades, this has been an ever-increasing problem, and at the same time, our experience and understanding of the problem has increased. So, do we have the ability to make some laws that would change the landscape, that would change the game? I think that we're getting there. We have, for example, some significant actions being taken relative to social media, and that, and also with respect to the presidential election in 2016, we figured out that Facebook and other, big actors needed to take responsibility for their important role in our society today. We need to, at the same time, be responsible ourselves as users and make sure that we don't open emails that are going to, cause problems.
All right, Mr. Christenson, thank you very much. And moving on to the next question, you actually also provided me with a nice segue here as we talk about not just cybersecurity, but election security. And Mr. Cotta, I want to talk to you about that because the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties, they recently had a public discussion on election security. It had the Benton and Franklin County auditors, Secretary of State as well. Do you believe in the integrity of our election systems here in Washington State, and why or why not?
I think that everything is suspect at this point because we've seen a lot of odd behavior over the last couple of years and beyond, really. And so I think what would end the debate altogether is just to come up with some rules of that change the current system. If we don't have mail-in balloting, I think that's going to help people feel a lot better. Voter ID, paper ballots even, and make the precincts smaller so that they're more manageable. I think that having stiffer crimes for election fraud are important. Making Election Day a holiday. And those are really good things that we can do just to put the issue to bed because, I think the election was stolen and I'm concerned about our election integrity, but I don't think it was problematic everywhere and it probably wasn't problematic here. But it would just be nice to put the issue to rest. Even people that don't think it was stolen like the idea of these reforms so that we can simply establish something that everybody's comfortable with. I mean, if everything's fine, then everything should be able to be audited. Everything should be able to be transparent.
Mr. Cotta, thank you very much. And Mr. Stanley, I guess the root of the question is, do you believe in the integrity of our voting systems here in Washington State?
I do, especially in the security aspect of it. I do not believe an election was stolen. I believe most of that is conspiracy theories. And I believe in the data and in the science of it all. And I'm confident in our system. Where I do have problems is in the influences and the levers of power within the system, and that we need to reform that, not the security aspect.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. And Mr. Christenson, that question moves to you. You're jotting down notes, which is great. That's totally fine. But I want to ask you about your thoughts on election security here in Washington State. If you're confident in our systems here, why or why not?
I've been a member of the local Democratic Party organizations for the last 10 years that I've lived in Kennewick. Prior to that, going back to about 1981, when I came to the Tri-Cities, I was a Democratic Party precinct committee officer in Richland for about 10 years. So I've got a lot of experience with our elections. Until the recent controversy, the recent comments and lies by former President Trump, when, after losing the election by millions of votes, he used a number of different methods of trying to turn it around, to overturn the results of the voters. I pledge allegiance to the flag and have ever since I was a child. And for someone, and especially a president, to try to take over our country, our democratic system, and overturn the will of the people as expressed in their votes, which are well counted in our area here, is a terrible act.
All right, thank you, Mr. Christensen. And moving on to Ms. Connors, same question to you.
So I think there's always room for improvements, and Washington State has been doing mail-in ballots for a long time. I recently went down and toured the Benton County Auditor's Office, and I went through a whole, tour of their system. And what I found was impressive. The auditor was very honest with improvements that could be made, and I can go over those a little bit. But on the tour, I got to see how many times each ballot was touched and counted and put into a stack, and how the first time they go through, they check the signatures, and all the signatures are checked manually. And so if your signature gets kicked back to you, which happened in our family last year, they contact you and you re-go in. Then the ballots come out in groups of 100, and they're counted numerous times before they actually get to the process where they're scanned in. The area where there might be room for improvement is they worry a little bit about the ballot box that's outside that people drop their ballots in. They would love some state funding from the state legislature to put cameras on those ballot boxes to keep an eye on them. And they also, as far as integrity of it, they do allow people to go in and watch it happen. They film the entire process. Every time the machine is on, it's being filmed. They are allowing this year a member from the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, and the League of Women Voters to be sitting in while all ballots are being run, and people can actually stand outside of the caged area and watch the election happen themselves. And so I think there are room for improvements, but that's how the system works.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Connors. And thank you to all of you for very thoughtful responses to that question. All right, question number 4 here, and Mr. Stanley will lead us with this one. What infrastructure needs, if any, would you support or recommend here in the 8th Legislative District?
I would definitely increase the we're in pretty good shape when you compare with other districts. So while some potholes could be covered up and and we could maybe widen a few streets, I think in general we're in great shape. We could probably use a little bit more a roadway over in West Pasco. We probably could use a little bit more going between Kennewick and Richland, a little bit more room. But beyond that, I think we're in good shape.
Mr. Stanley, thank you very much. Mr. Christensen, that simple question goes to you now. And when it comes to infrastructure improvements, what does this district need?
Well, I'd agree with Mr. Stanley that our roads are in pretty good shape, and I'm a professional civil engineer. It's something that I, have studied and know something about. And we have very good roads compared to, relatively speaking, compared to other places. One of the great things about the Tri-Cities is the natural beauty. And I think, for example, of the Badger Mountain trails. Those might not be considered transportation infrastructure, but they're certainly something that people can use. One thing I did notice is that we don't have an arboretum. That is a big park where there are all kinds of different trees. We do have one, but it's small, and I think that could be improved. But I think the numerous bicycle paths and pedestrian paths along the river, for example, are a great virtue of the Tri-Cities, and we could keep working on them to our benefit.
All right, Mr. Christenson, thank you very much. Ms. Connors, same question to you. Infrastructure improvements in the district.
So I'm a little bit concerned. I know we have great roads now. Everybody talked about that. But in the last transportation budget, we did not see money come to Eastern Washington. And so taking care of those roads is going to be very important in the future. So I do worry about that. I also worry a little bit about our growth right now that we're having, especially in the housing market, as well as the new buildings that are coming in, the Reesers, the Amazons, the Dairy Golds. And as we're putting infrastructure in for those, we're also adding traffic to our roads, we're adding traffic to our bridges. I am concerned about the city of Kennewick, which I live in, and the highway traffic from 395 that will be driving through the middle of the city. We already have traffic problems there, so I'm worried that our infrastructure in that area will need to be improved. I'm also worried about infrastructure-wise, making sure that we have enough of we're just talking pipelines and you know, natural gas is starting to be banned more. And so I'm worried about having our electricity infrastructure in. I'm worried about our dams because a lot of the reason these big companies are coming here, especially like the Dairy Golds with the cold storage, is they need a reliable grid and reliable electricity. So infrastructure-wise, while we seem to be doing okay with, especially when they're talking about transportation right now, I'm worried about our roads in the future. I love what John said about the trails. I would love to see safer bike paths. I would love to see more recreation within the infrastructure of the Tri-Cities in that area.
All right, Ms. Connors, thank you very much. Mr. Cotta, same question to you.
I went to a Good Roads meeting a couple weeks ago, and actually, you know, the defense of 395 was made. They felt like they were able to accommodate all the Amazon traffic and the new people and the new businesses that are coming here. And so I'm more concerned about some of the rural areas and the safety that we see. A couple years ago, I lost a foreman in a car accident. And he was in an accident right outside the entrance of the property where we work. Where just a month earlier the same accident happened, and we inform people and things don't get done. There are places where we can make things safer. We have intersections here in the Tri-Cities that need to be retooled and remade. We need roundabouts in certain places to be able to allow for people not feeling they have to gun it getting out of on a busy road. And so those things are really important to me, and I think we're making some strides towards those situations. We are underfunded proportionately with regard to the transportation budget that gets passed in Olympia. We would like to see our fair share of that money come here and improve our infrastructure as well.
All right, Mr. Cotta, thank you very much. And that does it for our first round of questions. You've each answered first. I'm going to remind you that we are reducing the time to answer this next round of questions to 1 minute. So not exactly a lightning round, but we'll give you just a little bit less time for the sake of time in this program. And this one, I'll preface this because as I even myself prepare to do this show, I get to look up the candidates and learn a little bit about you. And one of the things that it shows on some websites like Ballotpedia is how much money has gone to your elections. And so the question from the League of Women Voters is, how can the influence of money in elections be reduced, or should it be? Mr. Christenson, you're first.
Well, you can't limit the amount of money that a candidate can give to his own campaign, his or her own campaign. And the contribution limits that I've encountered so far have not been a hindrance to me. So I wouldn't say that contributions or funding of political campaigns is too constricting. There's plenty of money to go around if a candidate has a good message and, you know, has some friends, takes positions that he knows are going to help people and help industries and organizations that are able to give him money or her money.
All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Connors, same question to you.
You saw my PDC statement. So we're all first-time candidates right now, so we don't have the luxury of a lot of PAC money and things coming in, which I think is where they're going more with that question. So in our particular race, it's about friends, families, local businesses who support you, and that limit right now is $1,000 in the primary per person to give and $1,000 in the general election. Running a campaign is really expensive, and signs alone, as everyone can tell you, and the sign game is big this year. If you guys have been driving around the Tri-Cities, signs are expensive, radio's expensive, TV is expensive, and so being able to run your campaign in a way to work towards the future. Now, I think when you start talking about once people get in office and it's all PAC money coming in, that might be a different conversation to have. But in our race right now, I feel like it's more about private individuals, and for me, most of my money is individuals in business.
Well, and I think, yeah, you kind of get to get the nuance there between funding a campaign and a politician being purchased by that kind of money. So I guess maybe not to influence your answer to that question, Mr. Cotta, but what are your thoughts on how money influences an election?
I think the root of that question is that I think people want to see all the candidates be represented equally. They want to know about each candidate, and they don't want money to influence that. Obviously, when you have more money in your campaign, that's going to contribute to more name recognition. People are going to be more familiar with that person because they've raised more funds, and that's not a bad thing, to their credit. But the thing is, people don't always feel like they get to hear all of the issues being presented. They don't always know who stands for what, because money does help get the messaging out. And so that's an important part of it. But I do like that in our races, we're all. It feels like an equal playing field because none of us are incumbents, and so we're all going out to our communities and asking for those donations, and we get a chance to talk about our platform, and they can contribute based on the things that we say to them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cotta. Mr. Stanley, same question to you.
Yeah, I'm all about finance reform for elections. At our level, though. As they have already said, it's pretty minimal just because we're all first timers. There's limits and so forth. I would like some better limits on those that are not only incumbents but are higher level politicians or candidates that have run different things before. They are now going for a higher office. Thus, they're going to have more influence. The money then follows them. And so whether it be lobbyists, special interest groups, billionaire from Silicon Valley, whatever it may be, we need to do something to keep the integrity of our elections, not just the security, but also the integrity of our elections. So any way we can reform that would be good.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. All right, moving on to our next question, Ms. Connors. You're going to start with this one. Do you think there are any legislative policies that 8th legislative officials, possibly others regardless of party, can work on together? And I know that's a kind of a really broad question, but what are those bipartisan issues happening in the 8th district?
Well, within the 8th, the Tri-Cities is more than the 8th district, so I think when you start talking about the Tri-Cities, you have to talk about the 9th and the 15th and the 16th. And there's a lot of issues that we need to be pushing for within in Olympia, and a lot of it, I believe, is energy is a big piece of it, and our energy sector within the Tri-City area is Mary Dye has part of it with the dams. The 16th has part of it with the nuclear reactor. And so I think the big thing that we need to be pushing, one of the big things we need to be pushing is we have a lot of clean energy that is being developed and providing the state for, and I think as the 4 districts, we need to form a Tri-Cities caucus or an Eastern Washington caucus, and I think we need to start working towards protecting our clean energy that we already produce in Washington State.
All right, thank you very much. And Mr. Cotta, same question to you, and just sort of restate it. Those issues where the parties can sort of cross and work together that are happening here.
I think we all share a pretty heartfelt issue with the problem of homelessness. And I think what you're seeing in a lot of our communities is a lack of infrastructure to help reorient people back to get their lives in order. And we don't have any detox centers in the Tri-Cities. And there's a shortage of facilities that can enable people to get back on their feet. We need more detox. I mean, I do ministry with U-Turn for Christ. It's a substance abuse rehabilitation program. And so we deal with the homeless, we deal with people who are high, who haven't slept for 7-8 days at a time, and they're not in their right mind. They need a detox center to go to so they can spend a few days getting oriented, so they can speak reasonably once they get to that point. Then we need halfway houses like U-Turn for Christ to help people reorient and get connected to jobs, and then get them reunited and build friendships and give them hope and teach them leadership.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cotta. Mr. Stanley, same question to you. These kinds of policies that people can cross the aisle and work together to get done in this region.
I think Joe and April both had good areas, clean energy. We can definitely cross boundaries on that. There's the homelessness is as well. The prices for rent is there's just not enough low income apartments available or housing. There's also, speaking of treatment, I believe the county has just purchased Kennewick General for a possible treatment center, and I hope that goes through, and I hope that addresses that issue. I believe there's a lot of things we can cross the aisle on. I think we can do a lot even on taboo issues like guns and just safety issues. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stanley. Mr. Christenson, last one to get this question. What are those bipartisan issues that you think you can work together on in this district?
Well, I agree that in the 8th Legislative District, energy and energy technology are very important. It's something that everyone, Republican or Democrat, agrees is a strength of our area and that we need to emphasize. I view climate change as an existential issue, and one that is urgent, that we need to address urgently. And we've heard voices saying that this is taken on board by Republicans, and I look forward to their using this, the fact of climate change, to put emphasis on the clean energy that is available here, and especially nuclear. This is something that both at the federal and state level, Democrats are coming to embrace more closely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christenson. Well, I'm glad we talk about the things that we can agree on, because the next topic is about something that is decidedly separate when it comes to ideologies here. So my question, Mr. Cotta, you got to start with this one. If elected, what pieces of state gun legislation would you support, and what would you change or add? Also, we want to get everybody's position on ownership of AR-15s and what are colloquially known as assault weapons, aside from military and police use.
Legislatively, I'd like to see a constitutional carry law, where we don't have to get permits to carry concealed weapons, but we can carry them and defend ourselves when that needs to happen. The second part of your question? Gun rights, Second Amendment in general. The Second Amendment is there to form a militia against a tyrannical government or an invading army. And so the Second Amendment doesn't do us a whole lot of good if we have restricted use of guns. And so we need the availability to be able to buy the guns that we want, buy the guns that we need, because that's the whole point of the Second Amendment.
And sorry, the second part of the question was more specifically about AR-15s and the option of banning them. I know we don't have very much time.
No, I don't think they should be banned.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Stanley, that question goes to you.
As far as rifles with military-style power to them, I don't like to use the term assault rifle in that regard, but a powerful weapon like that, there should be definitely limitations. regulation for it. I don't know about an outright ban. That may be going a little too far, but we need to keep that out of the hands of the individuals that might do harm. So there's also there's lots of common sense options out there. I like what the military does on their bases. That may not be, it might be impractical for our society, but I like the no one carries, or not no one, but most do not carry. They have a central location that they have to sign out their weapon, but it's all in an armory, and there's someone guarding that all the time. So I kind of like that kind of scenario, just something that we can be as a community. But safety is the important thing, and we need to educate more than anything about safety.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stanley. Mr. Christenson, that question goes to you. I guess it's the simplest way to ask it is, what is your stance on the gun debate happening right now?
The Washington State Democratic Party new platform says that the rising tide of gun violence in this country demands laws that regulate the possession of firearms and protect the lives of all people, especially vulnerable populations such as school children, from gun violence. I was very encouraged by Congress's passage last week of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Washington is a leader in gun safety. We passed two initiatives, one in 2014 and one in 2018, that were approved by 60% of Washington voters and control guns. And I want Washington to continue to advance and lead in gun safety as a member of the legislature. That's something that I'm going to work very hard on. I do believe that AR-15s and other assault rifles should be thought of as weapons of war and should only be available for use by law enforcement officers and the military. I served in the Army in Germany in a Pershing Tactical Nuclear Missile Battalion. I carried a weapon, an M16, which is comparable to an AR-15, only when on duty guarding the unit's nuclear warheads. That's a valid use for an M16 or an AR-15. It was issued, as Larry has suggested, by the battery armorer when my 24 hours of guard duty began, and I returned it to the armorer's cage at the end of that period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Christenson. And Mr. Connors, I'll ask you the same question. And, I feel like you get better at asking the question every time I ask it. But what would Representative April Connors' gun legislation bill look like?
I am pro-Second Amendment. I come from a family of hunters. My kids are competitive shooters. I wouldn't say most, I would say all of the people that I know that own guns are responsible gun owners. I think part of the problem we have is getting the guns out of the hands of criminals. Mental health has also been probably an issue, especially when we looked at Uvalde and what's coming out of that recent school shooting. I believe in protecting our young. I believe in protecting our children. I believe that we could do more things within the schools, single point of entries. We could do. I've been reading about schools where they've had dogs in schools that have been helpful to having SRO officers, those kind of things that would, the dogs are obviously police dogs with the SRO officers. But I, again, am pro-Second Amendment. I would not place a ban on repeating weapons.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Connors. All right, last question here before we get to some closing statements, which will be pretty quick here. Mr. Stanley, you're going to start here. Felt like guns were the big topic maybe a couple of weeks ago. Big topic as we sit here right now is abortion, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court. So what legislative policies, let me just ask it the better way the first time, what would the Larry Stanley policy on abortion look like in Washington State now that the state has more power to decide?
Well, I think our state, the current situation is good. We, of course, allow abortions. It's part of our medical community. It's part of women's health, and I really, as much as I personally am pro-life for me and my family, I do not want to put that on somebody else. So I want everyone to have their personal choice. So if there's legislation that is needed to protect that, I'm for that. But I want those decisions to be made between a woman and her doctor.
Mr. Stanley, thank you very much. Mr. Christenson, same question to you with your stance on the abortion issue.
Here too, I see things very similarly to Mr. Stanley. The U.S. Supreme Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling established a constitutional right to abortion. For nearly 50 years, women could choose early in a pregnancy to go to a medical clinic for a safe, legal abortion. On Friday, June 24th, last Friday, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, giving to each individual state the power to outlaw abortion in that state. In our state, women still have the right to receive an abortion before the point of fetal viability due to a 1991 initiative to the people. However, this right is not on as firm legal ground today as before. Governor Inslee stated on Saturday morning that without a constitutional amendment to solidify this right under our state's constitution, we are one Republican majority away from losing the right of choice in the state of Washington. And he will be asking legislators to pass a constitutional amendment under the state's constitution, to pass a constitutional amendment under our state's constitution to protect women in our state. I myself have always supported a woman's right to choose. If elected, I would vote for a constitutional amendment to protect abortion rights in Washington state. Amending the Washington state constitution requires 2/3 majorities in both the House and Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. And let's move on to the woman in this forum. Ms. Connors, what are your thoughts on this issue?
My personal thoughts is I would always choose life. In Washington state, it was voted on by the people in 1991 to make abortion legal in Washington state. I don't see that changing. So working on bipartisan support, finding common ground, reaching across the aisle, educating young women and men, and family planning, working on birth control system, working on our foster care system, working on our adoption system. I'm an adoptive parent. It's very important to me. I'm also, when you talk about being pro things, I'm also pro-woman, pro-child, pro-adoption.
All right, Ms. Connors, thank you very much. Mr. Cotta?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the Supreme Court made the right decision. Roe v. Wade was bad law because the Constitution doesn't say anything about abortion. And so it just makes sense that that issue would come back to the states and allow people to vote on that issue. I personally am pro-life. I believe life begins at conception. I suppose the only place I would personally draw the line would be if the mother's life was at risk. And that's just because I don't believe the government or any institution should be making any decisions about who dies. But I know what my wife would choose. I mean, after all, what's more honorable, to give your life so that your child can live, or for the mother to kill their child so that she can live? And so, pro-life is really important, and it's not going to. There's going to have to be a lot of cooperation, a lot of meetings, a lot of organization and cooperation to be able to get to something that we can all agree on. But I think the laws need to change in favor of being pro-life.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that does it for all of our specific questions, but we did leave a little bit of time for some closing statements. When I say a little bit of time, 30 seconds. And so maybe this is more of the lightning round here. First of all, I want to thank you for all of your thoughtful responses to all the questions. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for posing those questions to you as well. Let's get those closing statements, starting with Mr. Christensen. The 30 seconds are yours.
My experience as a fire commissioner in 2020 and 21, nearly 2 years, provided a sound initiation into public service. Training in the Open Public Meetings and Open Public Records Acts is required of all elected officials, and I got it. Fire chiefs, fire and EMS professionals, and experienced staff helped me to get up to speed, and the voters had approved a $3 million bond issue the November before, enabling us to replace some major apparatus and to build new Station 170. Democrats have governed our state since 1985. Governor Gardner, Lowry, Locke, Gregoire, and Inslee. It's time for 8th LD voters to have a voice within the Democratic caucus in Olympia.
Thank you, Mr. Christenson. Ms. Connors, your 30-second closing statement.
Thanks again for having me tonight. I am the best candidate for the position. I have been working really hard at this for the last 6 months. I have been meeting with local leaders, community leaders, local government officials, economic development departments. I've been endorsed by numerous state organizations and local leaders, including the House Republican Organizational Committee, former Congressman Doc Hastings, the House Republican floor leader, and all of the representatives and the senator out of the 16th district. You guys can find more about me at aprilforwashington.com, or you can see me out there knocking on doors.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Cotta, your closing statement, sir.
Yes, and just to finish up something on guns, 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. We need to be able to protect ourselves. I've been endorsed by Representative Brad Klippert, Conservative Ladies of Washington, many other people in our community. Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God, and the basis for that is loving our neighbor. Loving your neighbor means protecting and defending your neighbor's liberty and your neighbor's freedom, and that's what I'll do. I'll fight for you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotta. Mr. Stanley, your closing statement, sir.
I too believe we should love our neighbor. And unfortunately, the two main parties and the media tools that they employ want to focus on us hating each other, hurting each other, saying crazy things about each other, and demonizing each other. If you want to change, if you want to change the status quo and get back to loving your neighbor, then you want to vote for me. A different party, a different politician.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. And thank you really to all four of you for being here today. We love being in person for these things. It's nice to have an actual face-to-face conversation, so we appreciate your time and hope it went well for you. Best of luck on all of your campaigns, seriously. And we want to, your voters thank you too. We want to thank the League of Women Voters, as always, for all those fantastic questions and major talking points here in this election cycle. And speaking of this 2022 primary, ballots for it are set to be mailed by the end of the week. The deadline to register to vote online is July 25th, but you can register in person all the way up to Election Day. That Election Day, a reminder, is August 2nd. And we are not done here at Northwest Public Broadcasting. We have hours of local election coverage coming to you all week. If you missed anything from this program or any of our previous, we'll be sure to have all of our recorded forums uploaded at nwpb.org/vote2022. That does it for us tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and Northwest Public Broadcasting, we thank those of you who tuned in. Have a great night.